John chapter 21, verses 15 to 22. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than this?" "Yes, Lord," he said. "You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The third time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, "Do you love me?" He said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, "Follow me." Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. This was the one who had leaned back against Jesus at the supper and had asked, "Lord, who is going to betray you?" When Peter saw him, he asked, "Lord, what about him?" Jesus answered, "If I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Friends, I'm so glad to be with you today and to see so many of you together as staff workers in East Asia. We heard the reading from John chapter 21, and we know that Peter was very, very at home dancing with surprises. In fact, he went looking for surprises. But today, it is about you people, and I want to really thank God for each one of you. You have been the ones, our precious dancers. You have danced with unknowns in these last few months. You have danced with surprises, not just the pandemic. Many other circumstances have come our way, and we have had to learn to dance. And on behalf of all of East Asia, I want to say thank you to you staff workers. You have been the ones, our frontliners. You have been our first responders, our men and women on the ground. Shock did not stop us. Our hearts brought us out there with the students. We may not have known what to do when the pandemic struck, when the classes were cancelled, when we couldn't connect. But we went out there and did everything to be able to connect with our students, our graduates. And really, I thank God for each one of you. When I look back, truly, this has been ministering in strange times. It has indeed been a shocking dance for, I don't know about you, but for me at least. And like our brother in Laos shared, in Movement C shared just now, really, it has been we thought we would die if we had nothing to do, but we have learned to adapt. But in this period, the shocking dance, two main things happened to us. And as we later allow the scriptures to water our lives, I just want to mention these two things. The first thing is this: everything crashed, every certainty crashed. We were brought on a pilgrimage of unknowns. None of us have been this way before. I mean, I'm not sure any of us were as old as the Spanish flu so that we can say, oh, I've been through something like this. None of us. It's a pilgrimage of unknowns. And for many of us, it has been a pilgrimage of pain, grief, and losses of either loved ones or people we know. We have seen things, not just the pandemic, that has made our heart ache. Injustices, poverty. We have been thrown off guard and sometimes discouraged. It has been a pilgrimage of disorientation. Ministry is very disorienting. I mean, can you imagine, even the most technologically savvy one of us, we never imagined that we would be doing ministry mainly online. You know, and sometimes it's frustrating because not all our students can connect. You know, I've been trying to admit people and I see the same people trying to connect and my heart aches because their lines are poor. And we are trying to connect to them and minister to them. Being a team, staff team, has also been disorienting. I'm not sure how many of us were able to meet face to face as staff teams. I can see the Mongolian staff together, and then I can see the TCS staff in Thailand sitting together. But many of us have had to have staff conferences online. So it's disorienting. It's a crashing of certainty. But at the same time, it has been a time of new births. A dance of new births, you know, new inroads, where we never explored before, or unexpected opportunities to do ministry. In fact, these series of webinars have been such things. You know, it's opportunities that God has given us. It has been invigorating, new inroads into ministry. We have also had new openings into people's lives because many of them needed to talk during this time. It's been tough. New questions arise about whether we can sustain just virtual meetings. How can we be more creative and add a personal touch? So it is a dance of new births and a crashing of certainty. And Peter was used to both. He was used to both unexpected things happening, no certainty in his life, and at the same time, new births. My friend, I call Peter God's wave rider. Why do I say that? I mean, not only because he walked on water, but a wave rider is a person, when the wave comes, he goes towards it and he tries to stand on the wave. The dictionary meaning of a wave rider is a curious person with the capacity to go with the flow. Many of us don't like new things. Peter did. Seizing opportunities where others saw no opportunity or only saw danger. That is Peter for you. I mean, just recall his life. Before he came to this point where Yupi read for us, this point where everything had crashed around him, he rode the colorful waves in his life, many colors. You know, he rode the waves of colors. He had experiences with Jesus, of course, where it was end of the road experiences. Remember the storm? When they thought they were going to die, they were going to drown. And suddenly a voice, peace, be still. Peter rode that storm with Jesus in the midst. Then, right when they reached the other side, there was a man with a legion of demons within him. He had to be chained, and he lived in the grave, in the tombs. And Peter met that end of the road man who had no other hope and saw Jesus breaking through into his life. Jairus' daughter, she had died. And they walked into that room, and Jesus said something so silly that people laughed. She's not dead. And Peter saw death, and then he saw resurrection. Lepers could never be healed, and Peter saw these end of the road lepers who had no other hope being touched by Jesus, and suddenly they were healed. Lazarus coming out of the tomb after being dead for a few days. My friends, he had end of the road experiences, but he had shocking experiences too. You know, one day as he was with Jesus, he overheard Jesus telling a group of people what a good neighbor is. And Jesus shocked everybody by using the example of a Samaritan, a hated Samaritan, and used him as an example of a good neighbor. Wow. Peter had really shocking experiences with Jesus. And more than that, later, after Jesus had died and resurrected, he was praying and he saw a vision of unclean animals. And a voice said, "Eat them." And he said, "Never." And soon after that, he was invited to go and minister to the unclean Gentiles. Peter had shocking experiences with Jesus, a wave of colors. But what shocked him the most was when he tried to tell Jesus what it means to be a good king. You are going to Jerusalem as a king. Don't talk about dying. And Jesus shocked him by saying, "Get thee behind me, Satan." Peter also had failures. And you and I know so well, we remember him often for his failures. He boasted, "I will not deny you, even if others deny you." And within hours, he was denying Jesus 3 times. And when they caught Jesus, all the disciples panicked. Peter pulled out his sword and cut off the ear of the high priest's servant, Malchus. Now, my friends, violence. Peter had experienced it all kinds of waves, all kinds of colors. But at this point, he had crashed. And he heard the voice of Jesus after breakfast, asking him, "Peter, do you love me more than this?" Peter says, "You know all things, Lord." Then the voice said, "Feed my sheep, feed my lamb." 3 times until Peter was very troubled. Peter's wave of turning came at this point, and after this, he was never the same again. His wave of turning came with this question directed to him: "Do you love me?" And this love was a loaded question from Jesus. Do you love me? It's going to be demanding to love me. It's going to be demand sacrifice out of you to love me. It's going to be inconvenient, Peter, to love me. Do you love me? And that same question echoes in our lives, watering our lives as we face the many crashes in our lives. And the voice comes right after that question: "Feed my sheep." Now, many of us have very nice pictures of sheep, but my Mongolian colleagues tell me that sheep can be nasty. They bite. They can be very stubborn. They often get lost. And the sheep you and I serve are in pain, sometimes broken, sometimes angry, sometimes bitter. That is the meaning of feed my sheep. Jesus was giving this imagery to show Peter it's going to demand everything out of him. From fishermen, he was going to become a fisher of men. From fisherman, he was going to become a shepherd of the sheep. It was really the turning point in Peter's life. And after this, you see a very different Peter when you see him in the Bible. Not only a wave of colors, not only this turning point, with this turning point came verses 18 onwards. Jesus starts to tell him, when you are old, this is how you will live your life. You will be led to places you do not want to go. And Jesus was talking about or prophesying the way Peter would die. He would end up being crucified. That was the imagery of being crucified that Jesus was talking about. But immediately after that, look at the next line, what Jesus says in verse 19. Follow me. Keep your eyes on me. Follow me. Don't take your eyes off, because then the waves would make you drown. But in between the commission, feed my sheep, and his ending, his death, there was this journey of unknowns. It would be a wave of surprise that comes as he lives his life, as he lives his calling before God. The journey would be a call to adventure. Would he be safe? Yes, because Jesus would be with him. I am with you always. But not the safety he desired. So he was unassured that he would not go through difficult times. He was not told. It would be an adventure. But again, Jesus repeats, follow me. Now, these are the three things that kept Peter going. Jumping into all colors of life, making the turnings, examining himself, and also allowing himself to be surprised and only keeping his eyes on the one he's called to follow. Coming back to you and I, you are invited, my friends. We are invited to continue dancing with surprises. It's not about the pandemic. The pandemic only heightens this call. All of life, we are invited to dance with the one who leads the dance, our Lord. You know, and we need to learn to be flexible and fluid. Just now, I don't know how many of you did the Zumba, actually did the Zumba. You know, to dance, you need to be flexible. We need to learn the rhythm of the dance. The rhythm of surprise means we jump in when things happen, willing to be present, even when we don't know how to move. Willing to be present, get wet, get dirty, even when we face walls. We have faith in the one who moves mountains. So none of us have answers in the season that we have gone through, but we have jumped in, willing to be present. That is the rhythm of surprise. Along with it comes the call to surrender to the one who leads us. Jesus leads the dance. So when realities come and it's difficult, where are our eyes? On the realities, yes, but on Jesus. Follow me. And we can only do that when we have this spirit of adventure. I know not all of us have this spirit of adventure. When we want to learn to trust, I tell the staff workers, they ask me how to trust. I say, go and do bungee jumping. Jump off a cliff, of course, with some safety harness. To have that spirit of adventure, we need to have a spirit of playfulness, a spirit of expectancy, and not needing to know. It is high adrenaline. It also means we have to hold our programs in open hands. It's not about programs. We can't be boxed in. The rhythm of surprise comes together, more importantly, with the rhythm of love. Jesus asks you and I, do you love me? Feed my sheep. He calls us to a generosity where even when we have nothing left, he says, give my sheep something to eat. The disciples had a taste of it when they were asked to feed the 5,000. And they didn't know what to do. And Jesus provided the food. Their role was to be the waiters who distributed the food. Would you love him in that way? To be a waiter, to be generous with your love. The rhythm of love involves sacrifice, giving everything and no turning back, because, only because he has given everything for us again and yet again, so that we can rise up again and yet again with eyes only for our partner. Follow me, the Lord Jesus. I want to end with this call to say, my friends, thank you. Thank you for being great staff workers. All of us are so proud of you. And I'm so thankful that, even when we were caught by surprise, we continued. But the best way to continue is to allow ourselves to ask ourselves this question. Do you love me? Do you love Jesus? He will lead the dance. Follow him. So my challenge to myself and to you and all of us, we are in the Odyssey. Odyssey is a long and difficult journey of dancing with surprises. None of us like surprises. And all of life is our practice field. And I hope that you will take heart and we will go through this together as staff workers. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Together with me today are three of my senior colleagues from the region. Let me introduce them to you. They are Ate Christy Hutare, who is the outgoing General Secretary of the IVCF Philippines. We have Lisman Komaladi, the outgoing General Secretary of Singapore FES, and my colleague Jong Ho Kim, who is the Associate Regional Secretary of East Asia. And together we want to be able to answer questions that you have. So if you have questions on this theme, how do we face the months ahead? Could you please type it in the chat, and we will take your questions as we go along. We have 30 minutes for this portion, and I want to begin by asking some questions that have already come in. The first question is this: we are changed forever by this pandemic. What are these changes that are etched permanently in our ministry? What are these changes that are etched permanently in our ministry?
Okay. Let me try to answer these questions. Okay, hi everyone. I think this is a $1 million questions because the permanent change may apply differently at the different context of movement. But let me answer briefly. At least there are three level of permanent change that actually may happen. Since we are talking about pandemic, I use the 3P or changes. I think first that we all know and realize that at the practical level there are many permanent changes. Everything moves online. There may be a safe distancing. We are unable to go to campus. That maybe may happen now, or maybe also happening in the future. Even the pedagogy that actually we want to do and teach our students may change. Second one is on the perspective level. I think it's the not only in the practical level in the ministry is changing, but also the way we see ministry. We realize that we are more fragile. The future is more unpredictable. Like what Alex say is we need more flexibility. And at the same time, we also understand that actually we are now more interdependent than before. And we need a more global solidarity. Then we can't do everything alone. And the last change that may or may not happen already, but I think is also a philosophical change or existential change. When the practical level change and when the perspective also level change, and eventually it will hit our philosophical existential questions that what is the bottom line of our ministry? What is actually we can change, or what things actually must remain the same, and what actually that we need to to make sure that is existentially we still a student ministry that God called us to do. Okay, these are the brief answer that I can provide. Back to you, Annette.
Lisman, could you repeat the last few things that you reminded us of, the key things? We need to remember
The change at the practical level, the change at the perspective level, and the change at the philosophical or existential level. Yeah.
Thank you, Lisman. Thank you very much. And I hope that the rest of you would be asking questions. If you have, please write them in the chat and we will continue with our questions. And the second question is this: how will we cope with online ministry if this continues until late 2021?
Well, let me try to answer this question. Well, people say that the pandemic will stay with us even through next year, so we need to be prepared. For me, it was very difficult to accept this new reality or new normal, what they call it. I felt this is really strange, and I couldn't reconcile with this change. I had deep frustration in my heart. So the bottom line I'd like to suggest to you and even to myself is that we should embrace this new reality. Of course, we miss good old days when we had such a good time to meet our friends, co-workers with such a freedom, and we had the privilege of meeting students in person. Now all of this is gone. I know, especially, so I want you to remember this, Philippians chapter 4, verse 12, says, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. So I believe we are living in the time of in want. We are feeling hungry. We are missing good old days. Philippians 4:12. Thank you. And some practical suggestions. Instead of having this kind of large meetings all the time, I want you to spend more time on one-to-one or small group meetings because it is easier for you to build intimacy in small number of people. Try to break down the size of the meeting, online meeting, if possible, and give as much space as possible for students to engage among themselves through breakout rooms with good questions. Student leaders, they need to have this kind of extra care through one-to-one and small group setting. So meet them in person and one-to-one setting in small groups if necessary. And regular meetings are helpful. If you set up a plan for the whole semester, and by holding a regular meeting, you can build up relationship. You can go deeper in trust, and you can actually disciple students and plan ahead to have the same kind of expectation, to have everybody on the same page, share the schedule in advance, and don't overplan. Don't exhaust yourself by making too many meetings. And too many meetings will make meetings superficial. And of course, with caution, maintain face-to-face, in-person meetings, because this kind of human contact, fellowship will be a wellspring to your soul to keep your sanity, and delegate as much as possible. And when the meeting is over, have debriefing with the key leaders, students, and staff workers to learn the lesson and to improve upon what you just experienced. Back to you, Annette.
Thank you, Jung Ho. So minimizing our meetings, keeping our group small, trying to have face-to-face are some key things that Jung Ho is talking about. Now, I have one third question before we taking some more questions. How do we help our students and staff who are undergoing Zoom fatigue? Ate Christy.
Yes, Annette. Well, I think as staff, many of us have already undergone fatigue, Zoom fatigue. And this is a new term. It means the exhaustion caused by constant video calls. So it's a new phenomenon which started during this pandemic, and all of us are under it. Though it is known as Zoom fatigue, it also describes other video conferencing platforms like Google Hangouts or whatever you use in your countries. And we need to understand why video calls make us all feel so tired. Why? You know, you're not traveling, you're not going places, there's no traffic, and then you talk to people on your screen and yet you still feel so tired at the end of the day. Why is that? In my research, it says, firstly, our brains have to work harder because video calls require more mental processing than face-to-face interactions. Because when we are talking to each other face-to-face, we can look at the cues like facial expressions, non-verbal cues that we use to respond. And our brains take that in. But because we are facing the screen, we no longer have those non-verbal cues. And so our brains have to work overtime. And so in the end, at the end of our Zoom meetings or our video conferences, we already feel tired. Also, when you are in a call, you are met with silence often, especially when the microphones are muted, and or if the video is stopped. And if you are a speaker, it's like you're talking into a void. No, I felt that when I was speaking and then nobody is like responding. So it's really very difficult because that's where your brain is also getting some cues. And often we have to deal with delays and internet connection problems, which makes you spend energy. So that's the first. And then secondly, we're always on. In real life meetings, we don't see ourselves, no. But if you are looking at the screen, you see yourself there all the time as well. And our face stares back at us, alongside, of course, with our other colleagues. So it makes us hyper aware of ourselves. How do we look? Do we look nice in camera? And it also leads to performative feelings. So because you're always on camera, you have the feeling that you're always on, and you have to act accordingly. And but during in-person meetings, we don't feel others' eyes on us at all times. Oops. And then thirdly, we're easily distracted, especially when we are muted or when we put our video off. We can do other things like check emails, do something else. We multitask, and that requires more energy. So to the question that Annette said, how do we combat Zoom fatigue? The most obvious is, of course, to cut down the number of video calls that we have. Maybe one suggestion is for us as staff to establish no meeting time blocks. In your calendar, maybe you can put blocks of time for working and label those times in your calendar as no meetings, or it's just for working. No Zoom meetings, no conferences. So just put do not book. Or another way is to set aside half of your day for online meetings, maybe in the morning, or the other half of the day for other work. So just half day meetings and maybe afternoons for other types of work. And I have to give this to myself, because I have so many Zoom meetings. So this way, if you want to meet with your colleagues, you still have time to get connected with your team throughout the week without, getting tired.
Right.
And also have maybe a suggestion too is just maybe as a team, you talk together that you don't need, you want a meeting-free day. For example, you can say, let's have a meeting-free Wednesday. So no Zoom meetings on Wednesdays. And so you can you can also reduce calls by using text or maybe emails, and Facebook Messengers, WhatsApp, Google Docs, or other cloud-based collaboration tools.
Right.
So that's when you're not in video calls. But when you are on video calls, always have an agenda first. It will make your calls to be more efficient and more productive. And schedule breaks. And I really like what we did. Steve led us in the Zumba. It's a good break to make us be active. And then make meetings shorter. Yes, all of them. Not every meeting needs to be an hour long. So if you can have a meeting for 30 minutes, then just have it for 30 minutes. So not only will your meetings be shorter, it will also be more productive. Another suggestion is to hide your self-view. Hide yourself. Don't look at yourself. And always, because sometimes you say, oh, do I look nice? You know? So, and then, of course, we mentioned about multitasking. Avoid multitasking when in a Zoom meeting, because going from one activity to another will require your brain to be doing some more energy. So avoid multitasking. And lastly, schedule screen-free time. So what you choose to do with your time is up to you. Maybe read a book, look at the window, see the trees, pet your cat or dog, like do some gardening, whatever helps you to de-stress, do that. So those are some of my suggestions, Annette.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you for giving an explanation why I have been feeling brainless for the past few weeks.
Yeah.
You know, we are attacking our brains and we are multitasking. We are on all the time. And Christy has given excellent suggestions. And I see one from Kelly as well. Make meetings shorter, have a Zoom-free day, have scheduled times for Zoom meetings. Now, I want to take a question, and it's a follow-up to what Lisman said. How do we learn to be flexible? Because at the same time, we need to follow our plans. So any one of you can answer, but yeah, how do we be flexible when we need to follow our plans as well?
I give the more senior one than me to answer.
Lisman, please go ahead.
Okay, Lisman, I call.
Yeah, Miss is I think is the only thing that doesn't change is the change itself. So means I think we need to prepare ourselves that in our life there's a lot of things is uncertain, and now it's becoming more and uncertain. When we have this mental preparation that whatever we plan there may be a change, then it help us to be able to be ready if the changes happen. And of course, the other thing is what I do is we always prepare for the best, but we hope for the best, but we prepare for the worst. So this one will help us to be flexible, that we plan as best as we can, but we need to be ready to prepare that if the worst thing happens. So it will help you to have some flexibility in your planning.
So
Let
do
me
your best, but be prepared for the worst. I mean, that's one thing that you are saying that will help us to be flexible.
Yep.
Yes, Jung Ho,
Yeah.
you want to add?
Let me add something. I believe this whole global pandemic is interruption from God. So in some ways, we are, by being flexible, we are letting God to interrupt our plans, maybe even our obsession. So I hope that you don't feel too bad about some of the plans you had to let go. My biggest hurt this year was to let go EARC, the opportunity for several hundred students to get together, and we couldn't hold the conference, but we had to turn it online. So that was the most hurting thing that we missed. So we hurt, but at the same time, we should pause and think about why this is happening and what is God doing even through this interruption. So divine interruption is touching all of us in a way that we may not realize.
Right. So thank you, Jung Ho, for that helpful view, which is this is a divine interruption, and we need to allow God to interrupt our lives and to listen to what He is doing. And so sometimes we may not be able to go with our plans. The last question, and maybe Christy can start and the rest can chip in. What can we do to encourage our IFES East Asia Fellowship and Mission Partnership when we cannot meet each other? You know, how can we keep, like even EARC was not on site. So how do we encourage this East Asia partnership in this season?
Yes, the pandemic has really changed our landscape. So I don't know about the situation in each of our countries. Perhaps the universities are back to in-person classes, or maybe they are doing online or blended classes, or face-to-face or big events are not allowed. So knowing our reason for existence, we go to universities. That's our we exist in campuses, and so our campuses are that there.
So they are asking how we can cross over East Asia movements.
Oh, okay.
How we can strengthen partnership when we cannot meet
Yes,
one another.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to that. So
Right.
and now that we cannot meet each other, we cannot take planes, or we cannot travel to where each of our countries. But actually, we can travel through our computer. Right now, there are how many countries that are together? There are 17 countries that are fellowshipping together. So thank God for internet, and thank God for these ways that we can still continue to partner together by meeting each other online or virtually. And there are many ways. I think God has been opening and giving us different platforms. One platform maybe has closed for now, but He is opening up newer platforms, and He is giving us creativity, how to be able to really meet each other online. I think maybe Jongho and Lisman would have some more things to say.
That question actually reminded me one significant meeting between Hong Kong and Japan movements. As we all know, Hong Kong has been going through a very difficult political conflict because the mainland government has been pressing down on Hong Kong's democracy. And the students from Japan wanted to learn more about the situation. So they proposed a meeting, online meeting, of course, to understand the situation and pray for the students in Hong Kong and the people in Hong Kong. And this is an example that this pandemic and this online environment that expanded our imagination. In the past, our imagination just stopped in the geographic limitations we have. Now we can overcome geography very, very easily. Now we can expand our horizon even further to include all the nations in East Asia, and maybe even further than East Asia. So think of the ways that you can approach other national movements, other students. Just don't feel afraid. You can create time and space for others to share their pains and vision and passion. So I believe it's an open opportunity for us now.
Thank you very much. Both of you are saying we don't have to stop. In fact, we have more opportunities to travel without, in fact, cheaper options. So
just by your computer.
Let's not stop, and let's keep our ears open and connect with each other directly. Go to one another, and we can still have our partnerships. So thank you very much for this 20 over minutes of question answer that we have had. These three people are my most senior colleagues in our regional team, and I'm thankful for them and their input. Thank you so much, Jongho, Christy, and Lisman. Now, all of us are going to go into breakout room for about 12 to 15 minutes. And this is what we will do. Please listen carefully. When you go in, quickly introduce your name, share one phrase, what these last 8 months was like for you. One phrase. And then share one prayer item we can pray for you. Please don't spend all the time sharing. We want to pray. So enjoy your breakout group, and we will see you back in about 12 to 15 minutes time. Thank you.